Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cold Hard Truth podcast. I'm Jack Smith,
I'm Shrikar Rajendran.
I'm Anish Gupta.
and today we're going to be giving you our reaction to day one of the NFL draft. It actually started, just how we thought it would. The first 6 picks seemingly didn't stray from the media's mock drafts, and it happened to have a lot of the picks we expected. Burrow to the Bengals and Chase Young, then Okudah to the Lions, and then the quarterbacks, surprisingly, Tua and Herbert went exactly where we thought they would go. But it got interesting right at the Panthers pick. They had to choose between.
Don't forget number 4 though, with Andrew Thomas. That one was a pretty big surprise.
We saw Thomas jumping up draft boards, and obviously I think the Giants wanted to trade down. You can tell because their pick was in very late. They couldn't find a trade partner. I think because the teams, the Chargers and the Dolphins, realized their quarterbacks they wanted would fall to them. But then we get to the Panthers pick, and they have to choose between Isaiah Simmons and Derek Brown. I really didn't think both those players would be there. So do you think they made the right choice there, going Brown over Simmons?
Personally, I think they did make the right decision. A lot of people would argue for Simmons. He's more athletic. He's the leader that this team needs. And as I said before in a previous episode, drafting a defensive tackle in your top 10, it's not the sexiest move in an NFL landscape with all these edge rushers, a lot of speed off the edge. But I feel like the Panthers made the right decision. It was a very tough decision. But, I mean, Isaiah Simmons going at 8, that is a big steal in my opinion, because he could have easily been a top 5 pick. I don't think anyone would have batted an eye. Instead, the Cardinals watched the Lions, Giants, Panthers pass on him. He fell to number 8. And I think Jeff Okudah, Chase Young, Derek Brown, they're all great defensive prospects, but there's a good chance that Simmons ends up being the best of the bunch. So getting a player who can compete with those guys that I just mentioned with the 8th selection, I feel like that qualifies as a steal.
Yeah, only time will tell. I think it's a really interesting kind of debate here because we all kind of saw the Panthers taking Derek Brown as the best defensive tackle available. But the thing is, I had the Giants taking Simmons. So I disagree with you, Jack. I think the top 6 pick, I mean, yeah, most of them were fine, but I think 4 really changed it. I think when the Giants passed on Isaiah Simmons, I think the teams in the bottom half of the 10 started thinking, whoa, what's going on here? And obviously, I mean, I assumed they were taking Jedrick Wills, but they shocked us all by taking Andrew Thomas, probably the best left tackle in the draft, best bona fide left tackle. And as the draft went down, a lot of people were thinking the Cardinals may take Jedrick Wills, maybe Tristan Wirfs, but how can you pass up a defensive prospect like Isaiah Simmons at number 8? And I don't really blame them for taking it. But it's really iffy because you didn't address one of the biggest needs at offensive tackle for the Cardinals. And we've seen this before. Last year, the Browns didn't do it, and Baker was constantly running for his life, trying to throw the ball away, and it would just get intercepted. So while Kyler Murray is a lot more mobile and he's shown that he can do kind of well with a bad offensive line, I mean, it's a lot different when the light shines on you. And while Isaiah Simmons it's a very interesting thing because, again, the Cardinals did kind of have this hybrid linebacker safety guy in Deion Buchanan. That didn't really work out for them. So maybe they're trying this experiment again with Isaiah Simmons, who's obviously a lot more talented. So we'll see how that goes. But I think for the Panthers, I think Isaiah Simmons would have been a great, great replacement for Luke Kuechly. So I did think they made the wrong decision, just because you have Shaq Thompson, you have Brian Burns, and Isaiah Simmons would have been a perfect quote unquote quarterback to that defense. And it's just a really surprising thing to me because once Simmons fell, I was like, okay, surefire bet to the Panthers. Okudah's not there, just go get him. And when they took Derek Brown, don't get me wrong, he's a great prospect, and I think he'll have a great career. And both defensive prospects are good, but I just thought Isaiah Simmons was a perfect fit for them, especially after the loss of one of the best linebackers we've had in this generation.
Yeah, and so, the Cardinals are already going into the draft one of the most hyped teams in the league after trading for DeAndre Hopkins and having a successful Kyler Murray in their rookie season. And now they get Isaiah Simmons. I think it's really them competing with the Buccaneers for the most hyped team going into the season. Speaking of the Buccaneers, we can talk about the offensive lineman a little bit. I think that the way that it shook out, there are a lot of good fits with the teams that each offensive lineman went to. I think Thomas will work with the Giants because he can play left, but I think he can also play a little bit of right. I think the problem with drafting maybe Wills is he plays right, and then once Solder's gone, he can't switch over to left after playing a couple of years of right. And then Wills actually going to the Browns, though, I thought was maybe the best pick of the draft. Do you guys want to touch on that?
Well, more on the Thomas
Shrikar,
pick.
go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, more on the Thomas pick. I mean, I really like this pick by the Giants. It took me by surprise at first, but I mean, Thomas has been an SEC starter since he was a true freshman, and he's either held his own or he's really dominated against some of the best edge rushers in the nation for 3 seasons. And I think few offensive linemen arrive more NFL ready. I'd probably say Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Jedrick Wills. Those guys may have been, I guess, splashier options at offensive tackle. But I mean, Andrew Thomas has the potential to anchor this position for the Giants for about a decade. And Daniel Jones is going to get its protection. Andrew Thomas is going to open holes for Saquon Barkley. So I really like this pick. And with Jedrick Wills, I also felt like that was a really good pick for the Browns. I had him going in one of my earlier mock drafts. I think it was right after the combine. He is a thickly built, wide base blocker, solid technique, lots of SEC experience, quick off the line. He's actually pretty fast when racing out to block for screens. I was watching him last night. There's no real flaw or weakness in Jedrick Wills' game, but I feel like he lacks the elite traits of a top left tackle. Like his arms are a little short, and I feel like he lacks the agility to mirror these top pass rushers in the NFL. But the Browns can plug Wills in at left tackle with Jack Conklin on the right, and they can be set. Or you can move him inside to guard, and you can get a guy with the leverage and consistency to hold his own against the Aaron Donalds of the NFL. I had Tristan Wirfs and Mekhi Becton ranked higher at tackle, but I mean, the offensive lineman the Browns preferred fell right into their laps, so I can't be mad at it.
Yeah, I think with this whole offensive line thing, I think Nate Solder, it's going to be kind of weird to put to kind of switch up that offensive line. I don't know the Giants right tackle off my memory, but obviously their offensive line hasn't lived up to expectations. But with the offensive line that slipped, I think it was pretty, especially in the top 15. With the Browns taking Jedrick Wills, I'm really happy about that pick just because I think he's really pro ready, and his pass protection, he can get a little grabby, so that might lead to penalties, but I think he can easily get polished. I'm sure Joe Thomas will reach out to him. He'll get a lot of coaching there. There's obviously offensive linemen that he can learn from in Cleveland, Joe Bitonio, J.C. Treader. Obviously Jack Conklin's going over there. So there's a lot of room to grow there. He's very agile. He's very mobile. So that part I actually disagree with you, Shrikar. I believe he is one of the most athletic tackles in this draft class. But I think one thing that was really, really interesting is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got their guy in Tristan Wirfs. They didn't need to trade up for him. I think the Niners took a W on that trade. I mean, I don't think the Niners are going tackle, though there were rumors that they might have because Staley was 50-50 on retiring. But, I mean, does it get any better for the Bucs? I mean, they got Tom Brady. They've got Rob Gronkowski. I mean, they're sure-firing their defense with subtle pickups. I mean, you've got 2 star receivers, and now you get one of the best tackles, the most athletic guys. You can switch to guard. Obviously, you have your left guy, so he can play it right, which is his natural position, and he's a Big Ten guy. So I think getting Tristan Wirfs at 13 was just amazing. And Mekhi Becton's a weird prospect for the Jets. I mean, he's a big, sturdy left tackle, but obviously there's some concerns there about, 1, level of competition, and 2, can he be a consistent starter? So I thought the Jets were going to go with Wirfs, and I thought that would have been a better pick. But Becton's not a bad kind of guy. I think all the teams who picked offensive line in the top 15, they kind of knew who they were getting, and I think they're well invested into them.
Yeah, I like the fits of most of the offensive linemen. Speaking of Becton, I think that he has the most upside. I think we can all agree on that of any of the tackles in the draft. But the problem of
I disagree on that. I don't
really
think so. I think Wills has the most upside, or Andrew Thomas, one of those.
Well, so the problem I have with that is I think that just you look at the body of Becton, it's 6'7", 370, and he's just learning how to play football. If he can hone in to all the technique, I mean, he could be a monster at the left tackle spot. The only problem I have with the pick is he's a very polished run blocker and not as much of a pass blocker right now.
No, but the thing is, I agree with it, but the pass rushers in the NFL are a lot faster and a lot more mobile and have a lot better technique than pass rushers in college, and especially playing in the ACC, did not play the pass rushers up to speed. So, I mean, if you're going to New York, you're trying to block different edge rushers such as Kyle Van Noy from Miami, right? Like it's going to be pretty tough. There's a lot of guys in the AFC East and just in the AFC in general that you do not want to go
Yeah.
against.
No doubt. I'm just saying I think he has the most potential if he can learn that technique and already being 6'7", 370 and just that strong.
But I think his size will hinder him. Like there's only so much you can do with that size in terms of like speed.
I understand it could be difficult, but the potential is obviously there. But being a polished run blocker himself and being with Adam Gase, who has shown last year he's a little bit reluctant to run the ball, I'm just not exactly sure about the fit yet. It depends how they really use him. But that really set up an interesting receiver position because we see that Ruggs went off the board next, and that left Jeudy and Lamb to fall all the way down to the Broncos and the Cowboys, which I thought were two of the best picks in the entire first round, Jeudy the Broncos and Lamb to the Cowboys. It was really all set up by the run on tackles.
Yeah, I'll talk about the receivers a bit. I feel like Henry Ruggs' ceiling is high. It's not really hard to see why he's a first-round talent. I mean, he ran a 4.27 40-yard dash, made him a combine superstar, and he showcased good hands at Alabama. That doesn't mean he should have been the first receiver off the board, though. I think the Raiders are hoping that Ruggs will be their Tyreek Hill, Deshaun Jackson, or whatever other speedsters you want to compare him to. However, I feel like most of the dominant speedsters proved that they could separate as the number one receiver in their college offense. But Ruggs was anything but the number one guy in Alabama's offense. Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, they both had over 1,000 yards. Ruggs finished with 746 yards on 40 receptions. I don't think he was close to being the top dog in 2018 as well, with Jeudy leading the way. But, I mean, the tools are obviously there. Blazing speed. He's got the hands. He's got the potential to be a game changer, but I feel like with more proven receivers in Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb still on the board, I felt like the Raiders were just doing an Al Davis sort of pick and just kind of chasing the fastest player available.
Yeah, the receivers are really interesting, man. Like I think with Ruggs, especially to the Raiders, I once the Raiders were at 12, I thought it was a for sure pick at Jeudy because they need a number one guy. Tyrell Williams was shown that he can't be that dude. And I think when you take Ruggs, it's hard to see him being a number one, though it can happen. Like I've always believed that his ceiling is Tyreek Hill. And I just don't know. Like, can he live up to that? That's very uncertain. Right now, I just don't know. And I don't see him being a good complement to Tyrell Williams, but again, they could easily prove me wrong. I just thought Jeudy was a surefire pick, but I really like Jerry Jeudy to the Broncos, who didn't have to move up. They didn't have to trade. I actually thought as the draft went on, I thought the Niners were going to trade back to 15, maybe get a 4th-round pick from Denver. Denver gets to choose between Jeudy and Lamb, while the Niners just take the other one. Instead, the Niners went Kinlaw, so that left the Broncos getting to have to make their choice between Jeudy and Lamb without having to trade anything. And I think they made the right choice here. I think Jeudy would be a great fit with Cortland Sutton on the outside, and Jeudy can also play more in the slot, which is something CeeDee Lamb did not do as much. But let's talk about the Lamb to the Cowboys pick, because I'm sure I know we have different opinions on that. So I agree with you guys on the sense that it was basically inevitable to take him at 17. Like otherwise he was probably going to go to the Eagles, and it's hard to pass up on one of the easily the top 2 receiver in the draft. But it's just with Chase on there and other team needs, I thought it was just a really questionable pick because, again, in my eyes, right, it comes down to team need or best player available. And they chose the best player available here in CeeDee Lamb. But my gut tells me it's a weird kind of pick because Michael Gallup had 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. And while, Jack, you're trying to tell me that he was one of the lead leaders in drops, he's still young. He has a lot of time to develop. And Amari Cooper just got locked up for 5 years, $100 million at a Michael Thomas price. And if you get CeeDee Lamb and he starts going off, like, do you, as someone with the confidence of being the number 1 receiver in Oklahoma, a guy who believes he's the best receiver in the draft, are you really okay with being the 3rd receiver on your team?
See, I mean, I completely disagree with you. I think this is the surefire top pick of the first round because
Wills to Browns over that. I think
I'd say over Wills to the Browns.
Yeah,
or Simmons to the Cards. I think those are 2 interesting things.
But this one with just the unexpectedness of it, and most people in the media have CeeDee Lamb as their number 1 receiver on the board. It was close for me between Jeudy and Lamb, but I didn't think either of them would fall to this Cowboys spot. And with Mike McCarthy coming in as the new coach, you saw what happened to the Packers when they lost their top receiving threats. I mean, that's why McCarthy lost his job, is because of how little weapons they had. And now he comes into an offense that's going to have Amari Cooper, Zeke, Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. I think that you needed to take Lamb here just because there aren't going to be very many chances for the Cowboys to grab the top receiver in the draft. But also you look, and I think it was a little bit of a preventative pick because they didn't want the division rival Eagles to have any shot at taking
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that part. But again, I mean, CeeDee Lamb is no question one of the best run after the catch receivers to come out of college. But obviously, my one thing about him is his level of competition that he's played in the Big 12. But obviously, he's shown signs of being a really good number one. But my thing is, I don't think he's going to be a number one. Quite possibly, might not even be the number two receiver. Because think about it, Gallup's coming off 1,100 yards in only 14 games, and he's definitely hungry for more targets and more yards. After Cooper kind of had a disappointing year, right? We still remember the Patriots game where he didn't record a single reception. So there's times where he shied away, and now that the Cowboys have said, "Hey, we're invested in you. We're giving you 5 years, $100 million," and now you go out and get CeeDee Lamb. I think that was interesting. Like, I agree, it was like it's hard to pass up on him just because the Eagles could have taken him, but I don't like the fit there.
I mean, in my opinion, I thought it was a really good pick. I thought it was a steal. Dak Prescott, I mean, he just got another reason to get his contract situation figured out in Dallas. It was already talented, but I mean, that offense is only getting bolstered with a receiver who has a strong case to be the best receiver in this class, in my opinion.
Okay, but again,
I agree with
you lost Travis Frederick. You lost your starting DB. You lost Robert Quinn. You have so many holes to fill.
No. I understand. Wide receiver wasn't a glaring need for the Cowboys, but I mean, this is a perfect example of just drafting the best player available.
Yeah, I agree.
And I mean, you lost Randall Cobb in the offseason too, so it's not like it's a bad. You can't say it's a bad pick if he's still on the board. And I mean, I think my comparison for him would be DeAndre Hopkins or Kenny Stills. And I know those are kind of far off, but I mean, even if he only ends up somewhere between these two comparisons, I mean, he's still a steal at number 17.
But he's not going to get the same opportunities as those guys. Like he's having to fight targets with
he will.
Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. Like that's a lot. And Dak Prescott does not throw that much. He's called Dinkin Dak for a reason. He's not the guy that's going to throw the deep ball consistently. He's not a guy that throws for a lot of yards. While he did have a pretty good year this year, a lot of it was in garbage time. Let's be honest.
Here's the thing. You can't let a player like Lamb just go past your pick because you don't exactly know how many targets he's going to get yet. He's considered to be a top 10 player in the class, and he's available to you at 17. And if you're the Cowboys, you think you're going to be competing. So how often are you going to get the chance to draft a top 10 player in a draft? And I think
Chason is a top 10 prospect in any draft besides this. I think this was a loaded class. And you said it yourself, Jack. I think Chason was a really good – it really just depends on what they do in later rounds. Like we said, this is just an immediate reaction. So if they do address center, defensive line, and corner throughout the draft, I think it's fine. If they can get Christian Fulton maybe in the second round, I'm okay with it. They can get Gross Matos, but again, those are guys that are probably going to go off the second round quickly. And now it becomes kind of a fight for these mid-round prospects. So it's really interesting here. Like the Dallas Cowboys have always had a good offensive line, and they haven't really capitalized on it. So now it's only getting weaker. They're only getting older, right? Tyron Smith has had injuries. They're starting to pile up. He's not getting any younger. Travis Frederick already retired. Zach Martin is still there, but again, he's hitting 30, right? The right tackle, I believe it's Lyle Collins. They're kind of Doug Free retired a long time ago. It's kind of been hard to replace him. They've been in and out with stuff like that. So it's been up and down. Like there's a lot of questions with that team. I agree in the sense that fine, Lamb was not like, I'm not mad at the pick. It's just, it's questionable. Like we gotta say that there are some concerns there with their team. Like I don't think this team is a playoff team right now.
I mean, in my opinion, the Cowboys offense was already one of the best in the league statistically, but Lamb has this ability to win in the slot and on the outside. And he
doesn't play much in the slot. I disagree with that.
But he can.
He can though.
We haven't.
That's going to make him.
I think Gallup would be in the slot. I would like
either way you put it. He's going to be a contributor right away, and I feel like he should develop with Amari Cooper. And I think Lamb and Cooper can be one of the best receiver tandems in the league. And that's an opportunity, in my opinion, the Cowboys couldn't have passed up.
But see, where does Gallup go? He has a lot of upside. I mean, maybe
just
you
said, in the
trade him, but
slot.
no. But my problem is if you're competing with targets, that's my thing. And for a guy like Lamb, who probably is going to have a big personality, he's going to want his targets more. Same with Cooper, who just got $100 million, keep in mind, right? And Gallup, who, if you just had 1,100 yards in 14 games and you're a young rising star, you're obviously going to have a lot of confidence in yourself. So now it becomes a fight, right? And now you see this pick, and as Gallup, I'm thinking they just picked a receiver, and I'm a clear number 2 target here. I'm a really good receiver. I can easily step in and get you 1,000 yards in 14 games. And if I'm Gallup, I'm kind of concerned. Like I think it causes a lot of big like the Cowboys, again, they always they always hurt themselves. They always shoot themselves in the foot. They just get big personalities, and it's hard to control. Like, look what Dak's doing. He's not even showing up to the virtual meetings. Like, these guys are just fighting with each other all the time. I mean, guys like Greg Hardy, Randy Gregory, I mean, they do this all the time, and like they just don't learn from their mistakes.
See, but we're obviously not going to agree on this one, but you can't pass up Lamb just because of what you already have. This is, I think, just going to make these 3 receivers compete for targets more. And I think that's what you're going to want in offense. And Jerry Jones is doing this pick completely trusting that Mike McCarthy will be able to harness the 3 personalities of these receivers and make it so it's like an actual friendly competition, and it can really help this offense, in my opinion. And like you're saying about offensive line, I mean, they could have reached and taken Cesar Ruiz at 17, but I mean, it was a reach where he already went to the Saints, and it would have been an even bigger reach at pick 17. And there weren't, I mean, corner would be the only other pick, but none of those.
That's what I was thinking. I thought they would go edge or corner. I thought they would go Chase on.
CeeDee Lamb at 17. So
we'll see. I don't think the experiment's going to work that much. I could very well be wrong, but I don't see them making the playoffs I don't see them winning the division. They could probably make it as a wild card due to the 17 game. Sorry, not the 17, the 17 playoff seeding, but I don't see them winning this division.
Yeah, I mean, it's a luxury pick that I think they're in a position to make based off previous drafting, but I just don't think you can pass him up. And I think that, I mean, you can agree he's one of the top 10 players in the class.
Yeah, I can. Okay.
Yeah, I just don't think you can pass him up picking at pick 17, and especially if you're assuming that in the future you won't get a chance to get a player of his caliber.
All right, and now we should get into the second wave of receivers. That is Ayuk, Jefferson, and Rieger. Let's start with Ayuk. I mean, conventional wisdom said the Niners would be a likely candidate to trade back from the 31st selection. I mean, they entered the draft with no picks in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. They picked up a 4th-round selection when they traded back one spot with the Bucs, but it would have made sense for them to move back again with their 2nd first-round selection and pick up more middle-round picks. Instead, they went all in on Brandon Ayuk by giving up the 31st pick, the 4th rounder they got from the Bucs, and a 5th rounder to move up to 25. The trade, I don't like, but the pick, it makes sense because after losing Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints in free agency, I mean, the Niners needed another receiver, and the team's belief in Ayuk specifically was one of the bigger surprises of the draft. So coming one win away from hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, that put the Niners in win now mode. They essentially punted the middle rounds to add a piece they obviously feel can help them get back to the Super Bowl.
The Ayuk thing was real. Let's work our way backwards here, I think. So yeah, if we're going to talk about Ayuk, I think that was the Niners. I think the Niners took a dub on the trade with the Bucs moving back. They were able to get a 4th-round pick because I don't believe they have a 2nd or a 3rd. So getting a 4th at the time. So getting a 4th was really important. And you know, you were able to move back and still select your guy in Javon Kinlaw while the Bucs got their guy in Tristan Wirfs. So I guess it was a win for both sides, but I didn't think the Bucs had to move up to get Wirfs. So I think the Niners took a dub on that trade. But for Ayuk, I hated the trade. I was really mad. Like, if I'm a Niners fan, I'm mad at that trade. One, because I think you could have gotten either Ayuk or Mims. I don't know what they see in Ayuk more than Mims, because I believe Mims is a better player just because of his height and his catching ability.
But Ayuk fits the scheme better.
Well, I mean, so that's where
a Shanahan offense, he definitely does.
Well, see, I've argued CeeDee Lamb 100 times being a better fit, and you've given me the same thing. But Judy's a better route runner. Judy's just a better number 1 guy. So my thing is Denzel Mims would be just a better fit with Debo, in my opinion, because I think he's a 6'3" guy, a tall guy who can get those one-on-one balls. I see Ayuk as being only a speedster. While he is good in the special teams, it's not a bad pick. It's just, I didn't think you needed to trade that far up to get him. My only concern was maybe the Packers were to take him, but the thing is they already traded up, obviously, to select Jordan Love, but we'll talk about that later. But I didn't like the selection. It's questionable. He has a 6'9" wingspan. Obviously, we saw that in his draft profile. But again, I personally think Mims is a better receiver.
Well, I think Jimmy Garoppolo, I think he's closer to being the right quarterback than the wrong one. Of course, this is a prove-it year. And I feel like Kyle Shanahan's scheme is the perfect landing place for a receiver with Ayuk's unique skill set. And I feel like the 49ers traded up to take the player the Eagles or Vikings maybe should have selected. I won't say they should, but maybe. I was a little down on the Javon
Ayuk
Kinlaw
over Justin Jefferson is what you're saying.
I said maybe. But, I mean, I was a little down on the Javon Kinlaw selection of, last night because, I mean, it was such a modest upgrade, and it felt like you were just trying to replace one position. But, I mean, the Kinlaw-Ayuk combo, on the other hand, I think that could give the 49ers exactly what they need to return to the Super Bowl and possibly win it.
So here's my thing with the Niners is they traded DeForest Buckner and got a first-round pick. They then traded that first-round pick to get a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick. And somehow that first-round pick went to Kinlaw, and the other fourth-round pick they had just gotten, along with another pick they already had, went to get Ayuk. What I don't understand is, did they get any better this offseason based on those trades? I know they freed up some cap space, but is Kinlaw and Ayuk better than Buckner, their fifth, and their first-round pick they already had?
Kinlaw is essentially a younger Buckner, and I do kind of see Ayuk as maybe a Debo clone. But I mean, I won't say they got better. I think they remained the same. But I mean, I feel like I don't think they got worse.
I would say they got worse.
I don't know. I think they lost
assets.
Got worse.
I wouldn't say they got worse.
I don't know if Ayuk's better than Emmanuel Sanders. And again,
they just went the younger route.
He's known for being a quote unquote speedster, but he only has 4.5 speed. Now, while that doesn't tell everything, I mean, it's questionable.
His catch radius is insane, though.
But that's the thing. I think Mims would have had.
And he's a yak king.
Better in
we got to keep that in mind. He can get yards after the catch.
That's the one thing I'll give them credit for, because again, that's my thing for a Shanahan offense. You need to have that, especially with receivers like Deebo Samuel, who's probably one of the best at that. Don't forget, George Kittle is not bad at it either, even though he's more of that quote unquote possession guy. So the Niners still lack that though, and I think Mims would have been the perfect dude to get that. And from the looks of it, no one was going to take Mims, and I think Mims would have been a better fit. That's a really good question, Jack, if the Niners got better or worse. I think Kinlaw is younger. He's got a lot of potential. Does he have the same potential as former number 7 overall pick DeForest Buckner? Remains to be seen. So there's a lot of question there, but I think Kinlaw was actually a better pick than Judy or Lamb, just because I think their D-line started with the interior. Like, that's where it allowed Bosa to get these pressures. It allowed D Ford to make his impact on third down. So I think keeping that interior D-line strength afloat is very important. So I think I'm fine with the Kinlaw pick. Just the receiver, I think Mims would have been the better selection here.
So, Shrikar, would you have rather had Kinlaw and a trade up to get Ayuk, or either Judy or Lamb, your pick, and then no trade to take a D tackle, either maybe Ross Blacklock or Neville Gallimore at 31?
Yeah, I mean, the two scenarios.
Yeah,
the two scenarios for me, kind of moments before the draft, was you take Henry Ruggs at 13, assuming he was still available. If not, you take CeeDee Lamb, and then you take Ross Blacklock at 31. But I mean, the thing that kind of convinced me to believe more in this Kinlaw-Ayuk combo is that Shanahan and Lynch both have supreme confidence in the both of them. And actually, Lynch said this after the draft, but he said if all three of the receivers were still on the board, he still would have picked Kinlaw. He was the first guy on their list. He just wanted to make sure that Kinlaw was available. So, I mean, you have that much confidence in my opinion, what's a younger and more shrewd Buckner. I think it could work. And I mean, I'm never going to doubt John Lynch, because he's turned around this organization for the much better. But I mean, it's still yet to be seen. That's why I kind of hate jumping the gun when it comes to the draft and already predicting stuff for these players. But, I mean, I believe in this combo, and I believe it can take us back to the Super Bowl.
It's an interesting take. What I didn't like, however, was the Eagles taking Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. One of my least favorite picks of the first round in general, because I just don't understand. I think Jefferson is much better than Reagor. I think Jefferson was closer to the top 3 than he was to the 5th receiver, in my opinion, ranking-wise. So I just don't understand why they would go Reagor over Jefferson. And also another problem I have with the Eagles is not trading up when they saw CeeDee Lamb slipping. So I just think the Eagles, they handled the first round pretty awfully, in my opinion, and they're easily one of the losers of the draft so far for me.
Yeah,
it's an interesting take with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think with Jalen Reagor, 5'11", 206, I mean, he does play a little bit bigger than his height, while he has a 4.47 40-yard dash. He's not a bad prospect, but I think all three of us kind of had him slipping into the early second. And I still believe Mims is better than him. And all of us had Jefferson going there. I thought it was a surefire lock when he was still available. But we got to talk about the Vikings, man. I mean, getting Justin Jefferson at that pick, while Jefferson does play a lot in the slot, so does Stephon Diggs. He played a lot in the slot, and Jefferson's a very quick kind of guy. And he can also get you those kind of big games, over 100 yards. We've seen that obviously with LSU. And Minnesota took some crazy wins here, especially getting Jeff Gladney at 31. I don't know how he slipped that far. I'm a really big fan of Jeff Gladney, and just the way he's able to play despite his size and how physical he is at the line of scrimmage. But let's go back to the receiver. I think with the Eagles, Reagor's not a bad pick again. Same thing with Ayuk. I'm not mad about it. I think Reagor can do well in that offense. I think what Doug Peterson is kind of doing, and Howie Roseman, is they're still holding on to Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. They're still holding faith that they can be those 1 and 2 guys, and Reagor can be kind of that third option. Well, that's, again, they're too injury prone, and like at some point you've got to realize, like, hey, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe it's time to invest in, one of those guys that can take you to the next level. And Justin Jefferson showed signs of being a number 1 receiver, especially in the playoffs, college football playoffs. So we'll see how it goes. I'm fine with what happened. Obviously, the Eagles could have done better, I think, but Reagor's not the best fit, but we'll see.
I mean, Reagor's the kind of guy who a lot of teams would kind of drool over this time of year, but then I feel like he has trouble taking the field as anything more than a situational weapon in the NFL, because, I mean, he's reminiscent of Mecole Hardman in many ways, and I think he'd be best off in a Hardman. Yeah, not as fast, but I think he'd be best off in a Hardman-like situation as an extra gizmo in an already loaded offense. I think that's where Reagor would have fit best. That makes him a very risky, very suspect selection for an Eagles team that needs sure things at wide receiver, several of them. So I don't really like that pick, not the biggest fan. Justin Jefferson, on the other hand, he had a few absolutely massive games, including 4 touchdowns in the Peach Bowl against a badly outclassed Oklahoma secondary. But I feel like he was often overshadowed by Jamar Chase on that loaded offense. And, some of his signature get open tactics, including jogging through his stem and suddenly squaring in or out, I think that works better in the SEC than in the NFL, but that's yet to be seen. I think Jefferson could max out as like a Jarvis Landry 2.0 in the NFL. I mean, there are worse fates, and this is a solid pick for the Vikings. They have many former starters to replace over the hours and days to come.
So, Jack, just a quick question. Where would you have seen them trading up? Because I want you to kind of elaborate on that. What pick would they have traded up to get seed?
Any of them. Like, honestly, as long as they got in front of the Cowboys.
So at 16,
the
Falcons wanted to trade up, not down.
The Falcons pick would have been perfect for them to trade up, because obviously the Falcons took Terrell, who they could have gotten, in my opinion, at the Eagles pick. So I think
because once Henderson was gone, I think it was all open.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that 16, that you kind of needed to have to trade up there if you wanted to get CeeDee Lamb, which they obviously did. But, I mean, we'll never know. Maybe the Falcons didn't want to trade with them, and the Cowboys would sure as hell not trade with them, knowing that they'd get CeeDee Lamb. But I have a problem with the Eagles not trading up and then even not taking Jefferson. I just think that they made multiple poor decisions in the first round. But the Vikings, Trigger, you tapped on it perfectly. Getting Jefferson was a huge win, and they had a good first round, in my opinion. And let's go to the cornerbacks, because we had some debates over corners in our mock drafts, and it seems like the media and the way they thought the corners would go off the board, we had it completely wrong. Because the way we watched the first round, it seemed like no one had any idea what they were talking about prior to
Whoa, whoa! I said Henderson was a top 10 talent. Whoa.
Okay, but Okudah and Henderson, yeah, that makes sense. But after that, I mean, did you have AJ Terrell and Damon Arnett as the next corners off the board?
Definitely not.
No. So I mean,
yeah,
I think that more of the once you got past the top two, which other than me, everyone thought Henderson was the second best corner in this class. Hey, we'll see. It's not over yet. But then AJ Terrell, Damon Arnett, Jeff Gladney, and Noah Igbenogany, whose name is ridiculous to pronounce, by the way.
Hey, hats off to pronouncing it, man.
That's just not what we expected. So you guys want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the Raiders were definitely working with a different big board than just about everyone. I mean, making Ruggs the first receiver taken was interesting, but taking Damon Arnett with their second selection at 19, I was literally like, who? Like, I thought he was a third rounder. And I mean, there were a few first round worthy corners you could make an argument for when the Raiders were on the clock. Even with Okudah, Henderson, and Terrell off the board, Arnett was not one of them. Like, and I mean, I think my argument against Arnett was that playing across from Jeff Okudah with a pass rush anchored by Chase Young, it's safe to wonder, how much of Arnett's success with Ohio State came from playing with some serious blue chip talent. So, I mean, that one was a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, these corners, again, I mean, hey, I told you, CJ Henderson, top 10 talent, and I'm firm on that. I'm glad the Jaguars picked him. I think that's a great pick for them. Also, they were able to get Chase on at 20, which I think is a huge win. So I think the Jaguars are also one of the winners that we're not really talking about that much. So yeah, hats off to them. But for the corners beyond Okudah and Henderson, first of all, I think the Lions, when they picked Okudah, I think that's fine. Jack, obviously, you thought they would take Simmons. I think Okudah is a fine pick there. We'll see how it plays out. I think he's a great replacement for Darius Slay, and he has a lot of potential. I see a lot of Darrelle Revis in him. Obviously, that's a very big statement, but I see a lot of it. I see a lot of Darrelle Revis in him. But going back to Arnett, obviously, Shrikar, you mentioned Chase Young and Jeff Okudah. Don't forget, he also played with Denzel Ward. I don't know how long, but I believe it was for at least a year. So Denzel Ward was a lockdown corner. Obviously, he's showing it in the NFL. So he's played with, like you said, blue chip players. But then again, he's only allowed one touchdown in the last 2 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that's obviously I'm a Buckeye fan, so I'm seeming a little biased, but I didn't see him going in the first round, maybe even the second. Like you said, I thought he was a third rounder, but his ability in one-on-one coverage is pretty good. I just don't know why they went with him over Christian Fulton, who still hasn't been drafted yet, and I'm a huge fan of his. And Jeff Gladney slipping all the way to Minnesota, that's a huge win, man. Like they got a guy who's a dog. Like I think I've already mentioned it, plays above his height, right? And I can't even pronounce it. Igbenogany. I don't even know how to say it, but the guy from Auburn. I mean, again, he played with Jamel Dean last year, so he's had kind of a blue chip player with him as well. Kind of a risky pick by the Dolphins. I think you could easily have gone with Gladney or Fulton here. I think Fulton would have been a better fit for them. So with the corners, obviously another surprise here. I'm so glad this draft, though, didn't go exactly how we expected it, because it brought a lot of interest to it. I think we can all agree there. But some of the picks, man, it's just like really, really questionable. But we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and what was surprising was that also there wasn't a single trade in the top 10. It was the first time there was no trade in the first 10 selections since 2015. And of course, the Niners finally gave us the first trade. And even that wasn't necessarily a big deal. They moved back just one spot as the Buccaneers came up to get Tristan Wirfs, protect their Tom Brady investment. With 3 quarterback selections in the first 6 picks, you'd expect at least one team to trade up for its guy. However, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and then the trades that we did see were a little bit unexpected. I mean, no one expected the Chargers to trade up to get Kenneth Murray. No one really expected the Packers to trade up and take Jordan Love, which I actually kind of want to touch on right now. What do you guys think of that move, trading up to get Jordan Love if you're the Packers?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Love was everyone's favorite developmental quarterback coming into the draft. He was a divisive prospect. He threw 17 interceptions in his final season with the Aggies, but I think he has intriguing upside because he has a quick release. He has a big arm, ability to make throws from multiple angles and on the run. That he went late in the first round was not surprising. This isn't a reach, but that he went to a team that already has Aaron Rodgers under contract for the next 4 years, that's nothing short of stunning. Like, I did not expect that. On the surface, it makes some sense. Rodgers is 36 years old, and Love is probably not ready to play in the NFL right now. But the logic starts to fall apart when you look at the financial implications, because Rodgers can't be cut or traded without a dead cap hit of $17.2 million until 2023. That would put Love in the 4th year of his rookie contract. So if another team had taken Love at number 26, it would make sense. He has the potential to be a franchise quarterback. The fact that it was Green Bay that pulled the trigger on him is what makes this a shocker.
Yeah, let's touch on – I think that was the worst trade of the first round because you didn't have to trade up to get him. For one thing, I thought the Saints may have been the team. Obviously, first I thought the Raiders as a very, very bold prediction, but then that kind of settled down once they took a third-round corner, which no one expected. Then I thought the Saints maybe could have done it, but then they kind of took a questionable pick with Cesar Ruiz after already having Eric McCoy. So that was kind of questionable in my book. Then you look at the teams that so the Packers were at 30, right? The teams that were ahead of him were the Seattle Seahawks, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Tennessee Titans, all who have quarterbacks locked up. Like, you really think they're going to take Jordan Love after drafting Lamar Jackson 2 years ago, or Russell Wilson, who's arguably a top 3 quarterback? Same thing with the Dolphins, who just locked up Tannehill. Like, there was no reason to trade up for him unless to, like, maybe spark some buzz in Aaron Rodgers. Like, if you're Rodgers, how are you feeling right now? Packers could have easily gotten Denzel Mims, which would have been a great, great selection. I thought that was a surefire bet. I thought that's why they were trading up to for him. But, I mean, like, what does that say about him? Like, same thing with Favre. They did this with Favre, obviously, in 2005, I think, if I'm correct. Obviously, Rodgers was slipping, and they said, hey, let's just take a chance on him. Favre is, I believe, 35 at the time they did it. Rodgers is 36 now. So it's a similar pattern to what they've done before, but it's a really interesting kind of thing. Jordan Love does play similar to Aaron Rodgers, who also plays similar to Patrick Mahomes, which is what he's been compared to a lot. Obviously, the talent is there, but there's a lot of questionable calls as well. So, but I also wanted to touch on the Chargers trade. Hats off to them for trading back in and taking Kenneth Murray. I think him or Patrick Queen would have been a great selection here. Obviously, they chose to take Herbert over Simmons, and I know they regretted that because they obviously came back in and took a linebacker. I think I wanted to touch on the Patriots with you guys, though. Don't have a first-round pick. They got a second and a third for their 23rd overall pick. What is the direction of this team? Like, I obviously, I still trust Bill Belichick. I still trust him. It'll take a year for me to lose my faith in him, but where do you guys see this team, the New England Patriots?
I see a quarterback in the second or third round. I think it's going to be pretty obvious. I'd like to see
Jake Fromm?
No, I'm going to
Jacob
go
Eason.
Eason.
Okay.
I think that he'll be a better fit, and I think that they're going to take this year, and they're obviously not going to be tremendous. I don't think they're going to challenge for the division.
I still think they can make the playoffs, dude. At a wild card team, I think they can make the 7th seed, and not only that, I think they could still trade for Andy Dalton. Maybe they got the second round and third round pick, maybe to trade for him.
Or for Rosen.
I know they have coaching.
Yeah.
What about their personnel on the field makes you think that they can be a playoff team?
See, that's the thing. You don't always need the personnel. Mike Tomlin went 8-5 in 13 games with some of the worst personnel we've seen on offense. So it's keep in mind, Patriots still have the best secondary in my opinion because they've shown what they can do. They've maintained all their players. So there's a lot there to like in terms of the defense. Obviously, they've lost some playmakers on the front seven, but we'll see how this draft goes for them in the later rounds. They can easily get some good pieces. Like, for example, Gross Matos is still there, right? Epinesa is still there. So they can easily fill up these holes that they've created due to free agency. And their offense, right, they still – I mean, Julian Edelman, while he's going on the wrong side of 30, they still have Michelle, right? They still have a decent offensive line with Shaq Mason, Joe Tooney, right? They still have – I believe David Andrews is also coming back off injury. So they still have some guys there. And don't forget Marcus Cannon. So there's guys on their offense that can do well. I mean, it's really up in the air, dude. But I still trust Bill Belichick. It's going to take a year for me to kind of lose my faith. So I still have them maybe going 8-8, 9-7, and sneaking into the playoffs. But let's leave it all up to chance. I really don't know.
Yeah, and then going back to the Chargers, I thought they gave up a decent amount, second and the third pick, which is good for the Patriots to get. They're now just collecting mid-round picks, and they thrive on those kind of selections. But the Chargers adding Kenneth Murray to one of the better defenses in the league already, with two proven edge rushers, and in my opinion, the best secondary in the league. And now they're able to get Kenneth Murray on the inside at a position they've really lacked for a while now. I think that yeah. I think this is an elite defense, and I'd go as far as to say that on paper right now it is the best defense in the league.
That's an interesting take. I mean, the Chargers will definitely fall in love with Murray in the film room and the locker room. They're going to iron out his wrinkles. They're going to turn him into a 3-down linebacker and a team leader, in my opinion. I think KJ Wright, I think he's a reasonable comparison. And I think Murray will make this fast defense faster and more dynamic.
Yeah, and then I guess to kind of touch on the corner or the linebackers in general, we saw that a lot of them didn't go where we thought they would, just like the corners. We just talked about Murray, and then Patrick Queen and Jordan Brooks, the other two linebackers other than Simmons, drafted in the first round. We didn't expect Brooks in the first, and we didn't expect Queen to the Ravens. What do you guys think of those two selections?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Seahawks' loss was the Ravens' gain. I mean, with the Seahawks taking Jordan Brooks, more on him in a moment, the Ravens had the door open to take Patrick Queen toward the end of the first round. The pick itself isn't that big of a surprise. The fact that Queen ended up being the fourth linebacker, I'm pretty sure, off the board is what makes this a steal. And I mean, the Ravens love to blitz. They're going to put a lot on Queen's plate, and he should be able to handle it and become one of the steals of the first round. But I mean, the Seahawks, it's inevitable. They always go off book with their first round selection. They're always picking in the latter half of the first round. So it somehow works out for them. But I mean, the Seahawks just about have the market cornered on reaches. The franchise that has brought you L.J. Collier, Rashad Penny, Jermaine Ifedi, and Bruce Irvin just struck once again. Jordan Brooks, I mean, a little bit early for him. I think you compare him to like these uber athletic linebackers who went before him, Isaiah Simmons, Kenneth Murray. They're both considered to be able to cover in space and be 3-down players. I don't know if I see all of that in Jordan Brooks. And I mean, the Seahawks have found gems in the middle rounds, which is usually made up for underwhelming first rounders. It looks like I think they're going to need to do that again.
Yeah, I think dude, why do the Ravens get so lucky with these picks? Like, I don't get it. In my opinion, you got the best linebacker besides Isaiah Simmons at pick 28. And Kenneth Murray is not a bad dude. Like, he's not a bad player. I just thought Patrick Queen was better. And the Seahawks, I thought you could have. I'm not sure if Josh Jones is still. I don't think he got picked.
Nope.
So so you could have easily gone with Josh Jones or Ezra Cleveland with the 27th pick. I don't know what they were doing. I thought Patrick Queen to the Seahawks would have been amazing as well. A good compliment to Bobby Wagner. I'm not sure if they run a 3-4. I'm still unfamiliar on that. But I thought he would have been an easy fit to slide in there. So the Seahawks have another questionable pick. We'll see how Jordan Brooks pans out. But, I mean, in terms of Chargers and the Ravens, solid picks. Like, I believe I had the Chargers taking Kenneth Murray in the second round. But, hey, they traded up to get him. Maybe they were scared that Seattle might have taken him, which I think they probably would have done because apparently they didn't like Patrick Queen. So we'll see how this works out. Overall, though, I think linebackers kind of went how we expected, except Isaiah Simmons falling to 8. I thought that was huge. Obviously, as the Cardinals GM, you can't, and Cliff Kingsbury, you can't really pass up on that dude. Obviously, with his prospect and his ability. So now comes the thing. Maybe the Cardinals trade up if they can get Josh Jones or Ezra Cleveland in the second round. Man, this team is dangerous. You got to watch out.
Yeah, so it was an unexpected first round, and it's second round's about to start at the time that we are recording this. Let us know down in the comment section what you thought of your team's first round pick, or if you didn't have one, what you hope they do on day 2. Tomorrow we'll be getting you a day 2 reaction for rounds 2 and 3. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Go Jedrick Wills.